Hello and welcome to Voice After 50, a podcast for women 50 and beyond who are navigating through this surprising, exhilarating and sometimes messy stage of life. I'm your host Beverley and I'm so glad you're here. I want to ask you something and I want you to sit with it for a moment before you answer. Do you think you can be friends with your ex? Not a polite nod at a school event, not a civil text about the kids. Actual friends. The kind where you genuinely enjoy each other's company, where there's no agenda, where nobody's keeping score or waiting for something. Because on the surface it sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? You were together, you presumably liked each other at some point, maybe loved each other. You shared a life, maybe you shared children. So surely some version of that can survive the ending. And then there's the other version of the story, the one where you genuinely try, and find out that friendship was never really on the table. Not because of a lack of goodwill on your part, or even their part, but because despite what you have assumed, you were both in completely different places, and no amount of good intentions can bridge that gap. I know the second version personally, quite well as it happens. So today we're going to talk about it, all of it. The question of whether it's actually possible to be friends with your ex. How do you know when you genuinely let go? There's no tidy resolution at the end of this. I want to warn you of that up front. But I think by the end of it, you might recognise something in your own story. And that sense of familiarity can in itself be quite reassuring. Okay, so before I get into my own story, because I am absolutely getting into my own story, let me share something that I found genuinely interesting. Researchers have actually looked into this, and they've looked into it quite seriously. And what they found is surprisingly simple. All of the things you assume matter, how long you were together, how much you genuinely cared about each other, actually turn out to be less important than one thing. That thing being whether both people have emotionally processed the end of the relationship to roughly the same degree. Are they in the same place emotionally? Not perfectly, not identically, but roughly the same. The research goes on to suggest that when people are there, when neither is still grieving or hoping or quietly waiting, friendship becomes genuinely possible. But it doesn't happen automatically. It takes some serious intention and adjustment, but it is possible. So when only one person is there, it's not friendship. It's something more complicated. It might look like friendship from the outside. It might even feel like friendship on a good day. But underneath, if there's an imbalance, imbalances can have a way of making themselves known eventually, sometimes when you least expect it. There's also something in the research about why some people find it so much harder to just let an ending be an ending. And it comes down to how they're wired around relationships generally. Some people need clarity. They need to know where they stand. And we're just friends now doesn't give them that. It's too ambiguous, too undefined. So they keep reaching, keep checking, keep trying to get a foothold in something that shifted underneath them. And when I read that in the research, I thought, well, that actually explains a few things. I'll come back to that. My marriage ended, and what followed was, well, I'm going to be honest with you, years of hostility. Now, I want to be clear about something because it would be very easy to tell this story in a way that makes me entirely the reasonable one. And that's not the truth. I had my moments after the breakup. The covert, snidey comments. You know the ones. The kind that aren't quite direct enough to be called out, but land exactly where they're intended. I'm not proud of that, but it is true. And he had his. The incessant questions to our children about what I was doing and where I was and who I was seeing. The kind of surveillance that isn't quite surveillance officially because it's just asking, isn't it? But is it? And our children, our now adult children, were stuck in the middle of all of it. Not dramatically, not in a way that announced itself, but in the quiet, exhausting way that children of divorced parents know really well. The slight tension when both names come up in the same sentence, the careful navigation, the being asked things they shouldn't have been asked. It was our eldest who had enough, who sat us both down essentially and said, "This has to stop." Not in those exact words, but that was the message. And fair enough. More than fair enough. So we had the grown-up conversation, the let's be mature about this, let's draw a line, let's actually try to be friends conversation. And I went into it genuinely. I really meant it. And here's the thing I don't think I said out loud very often. I did miss his friendship. But let me just clarify what I mean by that. I was not missing him in the present. That ship had not just sailed, it had sailed, hit an iceberg and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. I was categorically, completely not in that place. But I did miss the person I'd known before everything fell apart. The ease of it, the familiarity, the shorthand, the history. There's a particular kind of quiet when the person who knew an earlier version of you is simply gone from your daily life in that way. So I was genuine. We socialised. It was pretty good. Civility turned into something that looked a lot like friendship. And for a while I thought, maybe this is actually going to work. And then I realised it wasn't going to work. Not because of a dramatic moment. There was no confrontation, no revelation. Just a gradual, quiet, accumulating sense that we were not in the same place. I was there as a friend. He was there as something else. Still in his feelings, as I think is the most accurate way to put it. Still oriented toward me in a way that wasn't friendship. And you can't build a friendship on that foundation, however much goodwill you bring. You cannot be friends with somebody who wants more than friendship from you. And I know that sounds really obvious when you say it plainly and out loud, but when you're in it, when you're trying to be reasonable and grown up and mature about the whole thing, and actually enjoying the interaction, it takes a while to see it clearly. Which brings me to the question I find more interesting than whether you can be friends with your ex. And that's, how do you actually know when you've let go? Really let go. Not just told yourself you have. Because I think a lot of us think we've moved on when what we've actually done is get very good at not thinking about it, which isn't the same thing. Hitting 50 was the beginning of something for me. Not an overnight transformation, it doesn't work like that, but a gradual shift in what I was willing to think about, what I wanted, what I didn't want, what I was done carrying and what I actually deserved instead. For the first time in a long time, I was starting to think about myself. Not in a selfish way, but just in a way that had been quietly missing. So, by the time I actually explored the possibility of being friends with my ex a few years later, I was in a different place entirely. Not just about him, but about me. I had a clearer sense of who I was, what I wanted from the people in my life, and where I stood emotionally. Which, given that I was also navigating menopause at the time, was no small achievement. But I've done a whole other episode on that. And part of what that clarity showed me was that several years of hostility was exhausting and pointless, and not who I wanted to be. I wasn't spending that energy on him because I still cared. I was spending it out of habit. And at 50, you start to feel the cost of that sort of thing differently. I think the signs that you've actually let go are quieter than people expect. It's not a dramatic moment of forgiveness or a sudden warm feeling inside. It's more like you notice one day that you went a whole week without thinking about them. Not dismissively, they just didn't cross your mind. Or that when their name came up in a conversation, you notice you got nothing. No quick internal adjustment. Just, oh, that person. And you move on. Or in my case, the ship had sunk. And I was standing on dry land, completely fine, looking at the horizon. Nice view. And research, yes, more research, actually supports this. That genuine emotional processing tends to announce itself through absence rather than presence. You don't feel healed as such, you just notice one day that you're not hurting anymore. There's silence where the pain used to be. And then there's the other side of this, which is what you actually do when you've done the work and you've genuinely moved on, and they haven't. Honestly, I'm not sure there's a lot you can do. And I think that's the part nobody tells you. Because you can't want your way into a friendship that the other person isn't ready for. You can show up with the best intentions in the world, be warm, be generous, mean every bit of it. And if they're still in a different place emotionally, all that warmth just muddies the water. It doesn't help them along. It makes the lines blurrier. What I came to understand slowly, and not always gracefully, is that his not being ready wasn't mine to fix. I could be civil, I could be decent, I could turn up to things without an agenda, but I couldn't do his emotional work for him. Nobody can do that for someone else. And I think there's something worth saying about the pressure we put on ourselves to make friendships like this work. As if being able to pull it off is proof of how mature and evolved we are, that we have set aside any hostility and how thoroughly we've handled everything. But sometimes the most honest thing is to just acknowledge friendship between us just isn't where we are. We weren't in the same place, and no amount of wishful thinking was going to change that. And that's just how it is. That's just the truth of where things are. So, can you be friends with your ex? Well, I think the honest answer is maybe, sometimes. Under certain conditions. When both people are genuinely in the same place, when the friendship is something both people actually want rather than something one person is hoping will turn back into something else, when there's enough emotional distance where that dynamic can actually shift, then yes, I expect it is possible for some. But I also think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves when feeding into this idea, as if being able to be friends with your ex is the gold standard of how well you've handled the ending of your relationship. And if you can't be friends or simply don't want to be, means that there must be something unresolved. But you know what? And I say this from my experience. Sometimes you just looked at the situation clearly and decided that friendship wasn't what was on offer. And you were okay with that, even if the other party wasn't. Look, I don't have a tidy ending for this one. I told you I wouldn't. But I'll leave you with the questions I've been contemplating, and maybe you'll want to consider them too. Have you actually let go, or have you just got very good at not thinking about it? And if the friendship isn't quite working, is it possible that only one of you actually wanted the friendship in the first place? I'll leave you with that. Take care of yourselves. Talk soon. Before I go, a quick note that the content of this and all Voice After 50 episodes is for general information and entertainment purposes only. It's not professional advice, counselling or therapy, and if anything we've talked about today has brought something up for you personally, please do reach out to a qualified professional. You deserve proper support. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who might need to hear it. It genuinely means the world to me, and it helps more women find the show. I'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves. You're doing brilliantly.